So many of us remember the events that happened a couple of years ago regarding Metal Gear 2 in the Big Shell incident, and the legendary story behind the Hexagon offshore facility that we found ourselves in. The events here was a recreation of Shadow Moses and a Solid Snake project to make the Ultimate Soldier. But was this new protagonist just as good as Solid Snake?
Shit!
Jack? Jack?
Oh, Rose, is that you? What's up?
What's up? You were looking for a pretty long time. Something catch your eye?
No, just, scouting for the enemy.
Let's take him back.
So way back in October the 21st in 1983 on the MSX is where we get a good glimpse of Solid Snake and his first important mission in Outer Heaven, to take down the legendary soldier himself, Big Boss. It's pivotal we talk about Solid Snake in the regards of Raiden, just so we can simply get a good understanding how important and significant Raiden was in Metal Gear Solid 2 and why I believe he was on par with Snake. Solid Snake himself has definitely had more training on the field than Raiden, and actually was trained by the best, Big Boss himself. If we're talking who's more military sound, we could go on to a conversation about this that would last quite a while. But looking at it from a realistic standpoint, Solid Snake is definitely the ultimate soldier of all of the Snakes. He's proven that on more occasions by defeating the majority of them. Solid Snake as well is very well versed in CQC, but unfortunately due to his daddy issues, he didn't want to really use them up until Metal Gear Solid 4. The video is not to depict if Raiden is better than Snake, but just to say that he is good as Snake. Forget all the cyber enhancements and all the things that make him a cyborg ninja. If we're looking at Raiden in Metal Gear Solid 2, a lot of people get the impression that Raiden is some kind of rookie, which anyone who's played the game realises that Raiden's actually had past military background experience ever since a child. I think Metal Gear Solid 2 definitely gets overlooked on how really badass Raiden was, and why he really was on par with Solid Snake. I think it's just some fanboys and some people refusing to accept the fact that Raiden really is just as good as Snake. Solid Snake is definitely the GOAT when it comes to fictional characters in video games. That's not to say that Raiden obviously would be able to beat him, because of course he wouldn't. But of course I have to point out to all those fanboys out there and those anime dweebs who probably haven't been outside and touched grass, and if they did they'd probably get some
bitches on your dick.
So during MGS2, Raiden would find himself undergoing a mission very similar to Solid Snake, in the legendary infiltration mission that would be at Shadow Moses Island. Only this time the Patriots would recreate this scene and setting within the Big Shell, where Raiden would undergo a set of tasks that were very similar to the likes of Solid Snake, such as rescuing the President or meeting up with the cyborg ninja. At the time, who was occupying the Big Shell would have been Solidus along with the Dead Cell unit, but also at the time of the patrols was Grlukovich's outfit, which are nothing like the Genome Soldiers, which contain Big Boss's DNA. Infiltration wise, Raiden definitely would have had it a lot easier than Snake. But that's not to say that it wasn't challenging, as these soldiers are well trained.
Maybe you can give me death. My name is Fortune, lucky in war and nothing else. And without a death to call my own.
Raiden's first boss encounter would be against Fortune, a Dead Cell member that seemed untouchable and perhaps immortal, in what seemingly would be a task that only someone like Solid Snake would be able to accomplish. Raiden made a good job at making sure he could survive this entire ordeal. And with Vamp's arrival on the scene, Raiden soon enough made short work of him. After seeing what Vamp did to SEAL Team 10, it looked like Raiden would have no chance. But this just confirmed how much more badass he was by taking down this immortal character by putting a bullet straight through him.
Later, Vamp.
Now! Night, night!
It's time to start the party. Glad you could make it. The party's about to start.
Seriously?
It's time to get back to box.
Playtime's over!
So Raiden would take out Fat Man, one of the most craziest lunatics on the big shell. Aside from roller skating about, planting bombs was like his most biggest hobby. Yeah, he might not be the most dangerous opponent in Metal Gear Solid, but he was dangerous enough to endanger everybody on it. So Raiden would once again kick some ass and take out Fat Man like it was nothing, by completely defusing him. If anything that it shows about Raiden is that he's unlike any other soldier. He keeps his calm and his composure. I mean, the very fact that he was assigned for this mission meant of course that he was Foxhound finest, but obviously not just that, because the Patriots needed to use him. What do you think about this, Victoria?
Raiden is a badass, take notes you anime nerds.
I don't like them putting chemicals in the water to turn the friggin' frogs gay!
Snake's battle with the Hind D is awfully similar to Raiden battling the Harrier. And both equally, the aircrafts carry something deadly, such as machine guns and missiles, whilst the helicopter is very versatile and is easier to move around and navigate. Same also goes for the Harrier, as it has the ability to be able to hover. The reason why I'm pointing this out is because it's very impressive to think that Raiden probably has never had any combat experience fighting any aircraft before, and does an alright job in taking it down, practically by himself.
So you're the boss around here?
No, not just around here. I'm the boss to surpass Big Boss himself. Solid Snake.
No, that is not Solid Snake.
Okay, so it wasn't SpongeBob piloting the Harrier jet, it would be Solidus alongside Vamp. Just absolutely an impressive feat from Raiden once again, as he's practically taken down this Harrier all by himself. Even Snake's impressed. I mean, you're talking about a super quick Harrier jet where even sometimes barely the Stinger missile can even touch it. And when it's going at that fast and at that rate firing them kinds of missiles, it's very lucky if you're surviving at all.
Still ticking, huh?
So once again, Raiden would find himself fighting Vamp again, only this time instead of catching him off guard, he's having a full-on fight with him, where Vamp is utilising all his skills, such as being unnaturally unquick, being able to throw knives in quick succession, and also been able to take a shitload of damage thanks to his regenerative nanomachines. Thank you, Naomi. Because the fact that he can regenerate and heal so quickly and it doesn't kill him just makes him all the more harder to beat. You could argue the point that Dead Cell are not as strong as Foxhound in terms of his bosses, but given on the fact that Vamp and Fortune are practically untouchable, it makes at least a quarter of Dead Cell near enough just as deadly as Foxhound. And considering Raiden's actually Foxhound's finest at this point, what's not to say that he couldn't take on the likes of Foxhound in Metal Gear Solid 1? But admittedly, I think Raiden would come to a standstill if it was up against something like Psycho Mantis, as Snake has the mind and willpower to be able to overcome his psychokinesis, whereas I think as Raiden with his mental strength wouldn't have the fortitude to overcome the psychological games like Snake could. The example of this is if you look at Raiden and how he reacted towards the Patriots' control, whereas Snake seemed calm and knew that it was all just a simulation.
Everything I've done so far?
Raiden,
Snake, what's happening around here?
I don't know. What I do know is that you're standing right here in front of me. Not an illusion. Flesh and blood.
Rose!
Raiden, get a grip.
But Snake...
It's a trap. Since the Colonel doesn't exist, there's no way he can take Rose hostage.
Yeah, you're right.
Raiden is still somewhat naive in Metal Gear Solid 2, and is yet to still develop into the character that is strong and both mentally and physically to be able to control his emotions a lot better than he does to make him the ultimate soldier. Experience is everything in the battlefield, and admittedly Solid Snake has so much more, and you can't jump to conclusions and you have to keep calm in battle situations. Something Raiden would master later within the franchise, but unquestionably Raiden is still a badass and he's proven it more than once. It's also worth pointing out too that Snake's fight in Metal Gear Solid 1 between Grey Fox is something that would be questionable if Raiden could be able to do, such as being able to defeat him. Solid Snake himself struggled very hardly to try and beat Grey Fox, and if you ask me, I'd say this is the toughest opponent you can face within Metal Gear. If it was really challenging for Snake to beat Grey Fox, imagine what it'd be like for Raiden. But I wouldn't count Raiden out to be able to beat someone like Grey Fox because he has something special, just like Solid Snake. Whilst the Big Shell incident may not have been an exact replica of the Shadow Moses incident in terms of all the boss battles and the layout setting for the espionage mission that Raiden would undertake, but at the same time it was close enough that he was carrying out missions upon the level of Solid Snake. It does make this very impressive considering Raiden does not carry any of the genetics of Big Boss the legendary soldier of his generation. Raiden would also take on a multi-mass Metal Gear Ray unit, taking on several of them at once, compared to Solid Snake's one Metal Gear Rex that he fought, which really just tries to show that Hideo Kojima intended to try and make Raiden appear great within Metal Gear Solid 2, even though the reception he would receive wouldn't be so great at first until people later appreciated Raiden once they actually completed the game. And yes, whilst Raiden may have taken on several Metal Gear Ray units, that it was any less of a challenge for Snake taking down Metal Gear Rex. If you take a look at my video on which is the best Metal Gear, it's a deep analysis to show which really was the best Metal Gear. That being Rex, of course, and if you wish to know more, check it out. So finally that leaves Solidus in Raiden's mission, in where they'd fight on top of Federal Hall to finally put aside the differences and beliefs. But Solidus is a perfect replica, clone of Big Boss, and whilst he may not be the original, he is still a copy. So in a way you could say that Raiden was practically up against Big Boss, in a sense. And while Solidus may not have had the military prowess of the actual Naked Snake in Operation Snake Eater, he still carries the genes that make him a super soldier. If you ask me, I think putting all these bits of evidence together more than proves why Raiden is definitely on par with Solid Snake. It'd be foolish to believe to say that Raiden is definitely not on the capabilities and strengths as Solid Snake. After all, he has proven that he is capable of pretty much doing the same things that Solid Snake is capable of doing, and especially beating Solidus. Although I am with the belief that Solid Snake is the greatest soldier of all time, that's unquestionable. But to say that Raiden doesn't even come close to Solid Snake is just fucking ridiculous. If you think otherwise, fair enough, but I think you need to go see a psychologist. There's several video games, and people are naturally going to dislike what they will dislike. But Raiden himself was one of those who was poorly received, especially by those who played the first original Metal Gear game, understandably. But then now, these people who've looked that way at the time are now looking at Raiden as being an absolute great character in the franchise that shaped it for the better. But hey, isn't that the beauty of video games? I think Hideo Kojima himself explains it quite well.
King of Raiden that appears in the trailer, and people say now it's cool. From Metal Gear Solid 2, you know, actually in Japan, a lot of players actually did like Raiden, but we understand that overseas, US or Europe, players didn't kind of like Raiden. But I think that was wrong. The reason was that the people did not like Raiden was wrong. It was more of a frustration to Raiden that everyone wanted to play Snake, but didn't get to play Snake, so Raiden got the blame. Therefore, I wanted to prove by changing the perspective of how you can look at Raiden from a different angle and see that he's really cool. I wanted to kind of prove that.
So within the great franchise of Metal Gear Solid, Raiden has been submitted as one of the most important and beloved characters now, especially after the recent games such as Metal Gear Solid 4 and Metal Gear Rising. But I think it's cool to see Raiden's human side, and to also realise without the cyber enhancements, this guy was a lot more skilled than people give him credit for. I myself were born before a generation before Metal Gear Solid Rising, and I know that the younger generation are taken to Raiden because of these games. The beauty of this game, especially Metal Gear Solid 2, is Snake's speech at the end and how we can pass on different things to the generation, and I think it lives on, not just through the game, but through real life. Whether you love Raiden or hate Raiden, that is your choice. Well anyway guys, this has been the Voice Box, and this has been for your
ears only.
This is Raiden. If you like anything Metal Gear Solid, be sure to follow and like and subscribe to the Voice Box. Thanks.